what can we learn from ancient stars? Like, what do they tell us?
Ancient stars are really fascinating. In our Milky Way galaxy, we actually have 200 to 400 billion stars. That's a lot. But ever so often, one of them actually is almost as old as the universe. So they have survived because they're really small, and really small guys live very long. And so we can explore the early universe by looking at the chemical composition of these rare stars in the Milky Way today.
So, what would be the chemical composition of like the oldest stars versus newer stars?
Let's consider quickly what actually happened in the universe. It started with a Big Bang, and the universe was just made from hydrogen and helium. And then the very first stars turned on, and they were really big, which means they had actually a very short life. Massive stars party really hard, so they explode as a result of that fairly quickly. But the nice thing about that explosion is actually that in their cores, stars create heavier elements through nuclear fusion for gaining enough energy to shine. And all these newly created elements are dispersed in the explosion. So if you think that with every stellar generation that forms, you get a little bit more of all the elements over time.
I did not know that. I had always just assumed that all the elements were there from the beginning.
I know, but it's not the case. Well, actually, let's be detailed about that. Probably almost all the elements were there from day 2.5, but only tiny amount. Then with every stellar generation, a little bit more of all the elements got added to the universe. Right? So that means that today's universe actually looks a little different than yesterday's. That means that the sun, which is a relatively young star, 4.6 billion years old, has a very different chemical composition than the guys that I'm looking for, which have almost nothing of the heavy elements in it.
So then, like, did these stars essentially create the universe as we know it today?
They have certainly, created what we call the chemical or driven really the chemical evolution of the universe, and that is this steady increase of the heavy elements with time, which ultimately led to the formation of biological life on the Earth. Because we are made from heavy elements, also hydrogen, but in the water, of course. The universe could not form planets very early on because there wasn't enough carbon, enough iron, and enough nothing available, right? So it took quite a few billion years for the universe for the stars collectively to produce all this material.
How does the star form the element? Like, that's one of those things that you say that, and I just like, oh, okay, but I have absolutely no idea how that could happen.
Yeah, so this is the nuclear fusion that generates the energy. That's how stars make elements all the way up to iron. And the heavy elements, that's a whole different story. You can ask me about that too.
Yeah, well, now I have to, right? Like, how do they make the really heavy ones then?
I can't give you the full answer because it is actually still not known how all the heavy elements are made and in what processes and where and how much. That's what keeps me in the job in part. But the basic idea is really fascinating. So in fusion, you throw things together and the final atom will weigh a little bit less than the constituents. And that little mass difference gets converted into energy. That's how the star gets the energy and shines. After iron, that doesn't work. You would need to put, basically gas into the tank to run this, but the star doesn't have any spare energy to give. So it needs to come up with a completely different process. And this is where it gets kind of curious. So you take your iron atom, let's say, and if you are in a violent situation where two neutron stars merge, which is a very crazy situation really, then there are so many neutrons flowing around at such high density that they will basically bombard this poor iron atom with neutrons, and it will swell and become really big. But it's radioactive, so don't touch it. And once the neutron flux stops, it will decay, and then you will have created, let's say, a barium isotope, a barium atom. And all the other elements, which is the majority in the periodic table, is created this way through neutron capture in one way or another. And that's a really complicated process. And it requires extreme conditions in the universe. And so it's really hard to model and to figure that out, but it's also really cool stuff.
Is it surprising that all of this happened? Like, if you were to estimate what are the chances that all of these things would happen that ultimately led to us, what would you kind of put that percentage at? Like, is it surprising that these happen? It's like, no, this was going to happen eventually. Don't worry about it.
That's a great question. I yes and no.
Right. Like, eventually it would have, but we could be in 70 billion years from now.
I think so. I think so because physics is really amazing. It just kind of works, and you can't. It's inevitable for things to happen.
Kind of going back to the ancient stars, right? So the oldest one that you have been able to find is how old?
We unfortunately can't really put an age number to it, even though we would like to. But I have found a whole bunch of what we plausibly call second generation stars. So stars that formed after the very first stars had their fun, exploded, and then seeded that primordial gas with a sprinkle of these heavy elements.
Is there a chance those first generation stars are still out there?
Probably not, but again, never say never, especially in astronomy, where we're in the business of finding that one odd thing in the cosmos. There is a lot of theory and a lot of physics that makes good sense, namely that you have to cool the gas to make a star. And some simulations have been run to figure out, okay, how far could we push this? Maybe in the making of a big star, when it kind of starts to clump, there's a little something breaking off that could possibly become a small star and survive until today. We haven't found one of those yet, but that would be the only way to make one. What it would look like, I don't know. We have ideas, but the universe was really crazy early on. And it's hard to predict.
Yeah, like what would the early universe have been like? Like when these stars were formed, would it have looked different than it would today?
Well, it was definitely hotter and it was smaller, much, much smaller, and stuff was much closer by. Right? So the first stars formed at the same time, sort of the first galaxy starting to form. And a galaxy in this case is just a bigger gas cloud that was also gravitationally contracting. There were sort of blobs that were a little bit more massive than the rest here and there and much closer by. One of the bigger blobs formed the Milky Way. And of course, in other regions, whatever the biggest blob was, formed a different galaxy. The universe was actually pretty brutal back then. It still is, really, because the bigger one will eat the smaller ones.
So if you found the second generation stars, for kind of my understanding and perspective, like what generation would our sun be? What generation would we be making now?
So the sun probably formed after something like 1,000 generations. But again, we have to consider sort of, in one spot.
Yeah. It's a generation in each location, not a generation for the universe as a whole.
Right?
Okay.
Because we have to ask the question, what contributed to the chemical enrichment, the element enrichment of the birth cloud that brought forward the sun?
I was really hoping you were going to say like seventh generation, and I wouldn't have this existential fear of the vastness of the universe. Like, oh, it's 1,000 generations.
But it's actually not that much if you think about it, right? I could have said 10 billion because, there are certainly more than 10 billion stars around, right?
Maybe it's the way that I think that like 1,000, there's no difference in my mind between 1,000 and a billion. Like that is such a massive time scale of time that I can't even imagine it.
Well,
so if our sun is the 1,000th, around the 1,000th, one made today would be around the what?
10,000.
This is where I can't Like I can't. It's not like no. Somebody forgot to carry a one somewhere. Like the universe is really like all this big and this old. That just I can't even understand. Like I believe it and all that. I just can't even comprehend it. I can't even
Right, but
comprehend it.
yeah. But I mean, let's think about our own ancestors, right? I mean, I probably have 1,000 generations in my
You're
ancestors.
right.
I mean, I haven't actually done that, but that would be fun to look into. Um, and of course, we have to remember every generation takes its time, right? We are born, and then we have children, and then we die, and then the next generation comes. And the same is true for stars, right? And that's why it's only 1,000 over the course of about 9 billion years, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
it's,
yeah.
it's actually quite reasonable.
When you look at kind of the different generations of stars, are there certain speaking like universally, right? Like, are there certain generations that kind of stand out and like, oh, that's when that happened. That's when we think that that happened. Like Generation 713. Woo! That was a big one.
Um, yeah, I don't really think so. I mean, the first generation, that was definitely special, right? Because it formed from this different gas, just the hydrogen and the helium. We like the sun because that's our home star. Otherwise, it's really just kind of plugging along. As I already mentioned, not all stars are the same. And certainly they're, with every generation, there will be stars that are small and then bigger, more massive stars, right? There's always some variety within a given generation. And they will go through life differently, faster, shorter. They will produce different elements and in different ways. So they certainly all leave a different mark behind. And mass is really the big indicator there, right? The very massive ones explode as supernova. The small ones, they don't produce much, and they eventually become white dwarfs like the sun, which just means they're just going to be a really dense. They're sort of collapsing into just some hot core, and they're going to sit around in the universe forever.
But so if you need these kind of more, let me just use the word extreme for lack of a better word, environments to create these things, wouldn't the Big Bang have been like the most extreme environment? So why wouldn't they all be there
Mm,
right then? Or were they all then and then they were destroyed and then we
yeah,
remade them?
that's a great point. So let's think about what happened during the Big Bang. The universe started basically from this, and then it expanded really, really fast, and everything in it got basically stretched away from each other. In neutron capture and generally nucleosynthesis, you need the opposite. You need stuff bombarding rather than taking away. This is exactly why the universe stopped at helium in the Big Bang, because it got too cold, because the universe got expanded too much, and everything was flying away from each other, cooling down rather than being hot so fast and hitting each other, because you need to hit each other if you want to create something new.
Yeah.
Does that
That
make sense?
make Yeah, it does. It's like maybe it was there, but then when it expanded, it cooled it down enough that it was gone.
It was definitely, yeah, there weren't enough neutrons targeting just one proton, which is a very deliberate process in a way. It was definitely too diffuse. The neutrons were around, but they were too diffuse to really hit something to create a heavy element.
This is my thing with space. That like I love to think about space and find out about space for about 5 minutes, and then it just scares the shit out of me. Are you ready for some harder slash listener submitted questions?
All right.
What is your favorite star?
Oh, yes, I have one. I have one. It's my baby star. It's the one that I discovered during my PhD. It's called HE 1327 minus 2326. Please repeat.
A good name. Good name.
That that is one second generation star. It was it was a second generation star ever found, and it was my big discovery. And actually, I was at the remote observing with my telescope in Chile on Monday night, and we observed it again. I like to say hi once a year, take a spectrum of it.
How long would it take light from that star to reach us?
Yeah, so this guy is actually fairly close. Let me think. I think it's a few thousand light years away only. If you have a good small amateur telescope, you could take a picture of it.
Is there anything about the Milky Way that we would have more of these than other places? Like, is there, or is like, not really?
It's hard to say. I wish I had an answer. I can only speculate. I mean, the Milky Way seems to be a fairly ordinary galaxy. I mean, I know we like to be special.
I know, right? Like, we are one place in a universe of
I know.
trillions
The
upon
sun
trillions.
is a really boring star, and that's actually a really good thing because we'd be sweating literally a whole lot more if there was even as much as a little blip in the sun. It would get a lot hotter here. The galaxy is fairly ordinary, so I would say, yeah, unless a galaxy for some reason had a lot of gas early on and made a lot of stars and hence made a lot of elements, faster, so had a faster chemical evolution. Probably all the same.
What's kind of the holy grail of this research? Like, what is everybody trying to find?
Well, you asked the $1 million question. Is there a surviving first star? That would just be kind of cool. Now, I mean, we would learn from that these stars exist, and I think that would be really nice. It would certainly confirm our general view of how the universe got started. But we can also live without it. The sun has the combined elemental output of 1,000 generations of stars in it today. And so that's the direct fingerprint of the first stars that we can never observe directly because they died instantly, pretty much. The old star, you asked me, the first question you asked me is, right, what's interesting about ancient stars is that they give us the snapshot, the fingerprint of what came out of a supernova. We can probe what comes out of a supernova with these stars. That's cool. Because we learn about element production, we learn about stellar evolution, we learn about explosion, how the gas gets dispersed and mixed. It's the whole shebang.
What is your wildest theory about ancient stars? The one that, like, you would only bring up if you've had a couple with your astrophysicist buddies and like, hey guys, what about this?
I'll tell you about something crazy that we don't understand. So I mentioned uranium already, and we have thorium as well. So we can observe those really heavy elements all the way to thorium and uranium in some of the oldest stars. And they have altogether sort of the fingerprint of one particular process that probably is the one that happens in these merging neutron stars. And so we think that in general we have a good idea. Do we understand the details? No. And here's one interesting piece. Some of these stars have too much thorium in it compared to the other elements. And we're like, where's this thorium coming from? Now, thorium is radioactive, has a half-life of 14 billion years, which means half of it has decayed by now if it was formed 14 billion years ago, which is roughly the age of the universe, right? So early on. So what we're observing right now isn't even the full amount. It was even more back then. And thorium, as far as we can tell, cannot be produced in isolation because you can't tell the universe make just that element, right? It either you have this neutron bombardment, or when you have this neutron bombardment, it builds up all the elements in some kind of, chain reaction, basically. And thorium and uranium are at the very end of that. And so for many years now, we're very puzzled by where's that extra radioactive thorium coming from? So some theorist actually needs to come up with a crazy theory, not me as the observer. I just tell the theorists what to do. To explain to me how on Earth, how in the universe that is possible.